that's one of the profound things is, we're so serious as adults and serious in life. But something becomes available when you can loosen that up a little and look with a different lens. So we look at the primary relationships that matter most to people and give them an opportunity to really have them be as outstanding as you are willing to have them be.
Welcome to Landmark Difference Makers, where we interview people making a remarkable difference around the world. Get ready to be inspired. Let's jump in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Seamus Ford, and this is another episode of Landmark Difference Makers. And I'm here with Christine McCormick Harris. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Seamus.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. Well, I've been really looking forward to this particular interview for a while. Marci Willems is the executive accountable for the Wisdom Division. I know that you're a big fan of our courses in that division, and I've participated in them as well.
Yes.
And in particular, I'm really excited because, our podcast is called Landmark Difference Makers, and there is a program that I just recently learned about, which is The Difference You Make. And,
yes, it's very popular.
And there is a synergy naturally, but I think it's really a chance to explore this whole world of getting connected to making a difference in the difference you make. Because, we really try to inspire people with the interviews to go out and tackle something that they care about and make a difference with it. But I think we have a chance with this to, just really explore what that journey is to getting connected to that.
Yeah.
So with that, let's welcome Marci. Marci, hi.
Yes,
Hello.
Marci.
Hi everyone.
Marci, why don't we start out by just having you create a little bit of your role at Landmark so people understand it, and then maybe a little bit about how you came to be in this role from where you started.
Yeah, great. So I am the executive of the Wisdom course area and also of the personal coaching division, which is a whole separate division of Landmark. And I have been a staff member with Landmark in about 1 month. It'll be my 28-year staff anniversary. And I started on staff as the forum leader schedule manager. So I determined who went where and led what when for the entire forum leader body. And I did that for 7 years. And then I had the opportunity to work with Brian Regner and Helen Gahuli and Margie Parrott, and I was hired to be one of the 3 people who would ultimately someday replace the resource that they are in the enterprise. And I started that in 2005. And when I was like maybe a week in, Brian Regner we had a call, and he said, "What do you think about if I train you to be the executive someday? Would you like that?" And I said, "Sure." And that was it. But the power of your word, right? And the power of speaking, he created that. I said yes. And for the next 13 years, every interaction we had was inside of training and developing me to become the executive someday. And I have been the executive of the Wisdom area now for 7 years.
Wow.
So that's how that happened, is he had that vision, and he actually had the vision that I would be the executive of the Wisdom area and what we call the well-being group and the personal coaching division. And so that was the future that I lived inside of, and everything I did was to develop myself in that.
Well, you covered quite a number of areas, and I think it would be really valuable for people listening, just to, people are probably familiar with the forum. They're familiar with kind of, our seminars, the advanced course, perhaps communication courses, but not everybody has a chance to learn about wisdom. So I want to take the time during a conversation to really kind of explore that. But the other thing I think is, um, there's something distinct about wisdom relative to what the courses that people are familiar with. And I'm going to just describe my experience of it, but
Good.
I'd just love for you to elaborate on it a bit. Um, and I've participated around Landmark for a long time, and I've led our programs, but there's an experience that I always have, whether it's on a wisdom division program, or talking to any of the people that lead the programs or are responsible for the programs. And the best way I can describe it is the experience of being like whole, complete, perfect. Like there's nothing missing with me. And I'm no different than any other person. I think I can spend time in my head and I can really criticize myself and judge myself. But there's just something about, if you will, the space of these programs where I just find myself present, kind of out of my head with people in a way that it's just so reliable that it happens that way. And I can't imagine that that's an accident.
Definitely not an accident. In fact, there are certain distinctions or principles that underlie the wisdom course area, and therefore every that underlie every single program and offering. It's an expression of, and right, what came out of your mouth, it's being present, listening, that space of all is well.
Well, so it is a curriculum,
Yes.
and what does it start with, and what becomes available, once you go down that path?
Yeah, it starts with the wisdom course. The wisdom courses. And we have, you know, one thing that makes this area unique is that our three core programs in the wisdom course area, the wisdom course, the partnership course, and the developmental course on relating and relationships, are each, they unfold over time. So you're in them for months, sometimes as much as 9 months, with a community of people. And it's done in the spirit of an inquiry. So it's not like there's a set of distinctions and you're going to learn the distinctions. Now, there are things that you distinguish, but it's in the spirit of an inquiry. So you get to try it on in your life. And then you go out in your life and you experiment and you see. And then you come back and you share with others. And you're in this community of people also in the same inquiry. And then you have an opportunity to come back and modify perhaps what you've seen and what you say, and then go back out in your life again and run the experiment and then come back. So that's one thing, is that opportunity to inquire, to use your life, and to do it over time with the community and get that feedback and those relationships.
Mm.
The space of the wisdom course, some of the things that people not deal with, but what you play with in your life is play. So play is one of those things, which is really different from a lot of things you might think of as a course. What? I'm going to look at play? But that's one of the profound things is, we're so serious as adults and serious in life. But something becomes available when you can loosen that up a little and look with a different lens. So we look at the primary relationships that matter most to people and give them an opportunity to really have them be as outstanding as you are willing to have them be. And to get in touch with, what's my unique contribution? Each one of us has something very unique. We see the world in a particular way that nobody else does. We have skills, abilities, and talents that no one else has. And each one of us is set up to contribute in a unique way. And you get in touch with that in the wisdom course.
Mm.
As well as like what my life is for. Sometimes and it's clear for you, and sometimes you might not, but you have an opportunity to discover that. And then have your life line up with all of that so that you're walking out of there with a life that matches the relationships that you've created, that you've wanted, the contribution that you are, what matters to you most.
Yeah, before I have you say more about the other programs, you said something that really stands out, which is having your relationships be extraordinary as you're willing.
Yeah.
And there's something very human about willing or unwilling.
Yes.
Um, and when it comes to relationships, I was just in a conversation with um, my aunt tonight, and was checking in on her. She's dealing with some well-being things, and we talked about another relative who was married for a year, and her conversation was, she got married because she was worried she would never have a chance to be married. And it was this moment where, at that time in her life, she just her view of her, if you perhaps her self-worth or just her circumstances in life, it was like this, just the tiniest, narrowest kind of bandwidth for making a choice. And I don't I my own experience in being in the programs, I never confronted like how much I put a limit on what's possible and what I consider for myself. And that you really get to get into that in wisdom.
You really do. The limit, like you said, the limits. Every conversation is an opportunity to distinguish a limit, a self imposed limit. And that's the best kind. In fact, maybe that's all there is, are self imposed limits. And
Mm,
when you have the opportunity to see them, well, then, you're the one who gets to keep it, not keep it, play with it, raise the limit, disappear the limit. So those are all things that people get to explore.
that's great. That's great. I know Christine has participated in more of the wisdom programs than I have. Christine, I think
I
you did.
have. I have. And Marcy, because I am excited to get into the conversation for the difference you make.
Yes.
Um, the my experience of the wisdom courses, the wisdom program, like the division, is like when you're on a playground, right? It's like recess time and everybody goes out. There's not actually really one way to play any of the games. Sometimes you get on the monkey bars and that day, like the floor is lava. Sometimes you get, and it's like you have this, whatever it is, kids, they have this inhibition, this unlimited potential to create literally whatever they want inside of a 45-minute time frame or however long recess was. I don't, it was always too short. So in wisdom, there's the discovery and the inquiries. It's like, okay, maybe today the floor is lava. Let's see. There's no right way. So it does afford this freedom and this like this untapped inhibition to actually allowing yourself to want something absent the embarrassment that's there for us as adults for wanting something so playful, silly, ridiculous, not whatever that would be,
Yeah.
right? So for me, that was the experience that was there. And then and this may lead us into the conversation for the difference you make.
Mm-hmm.
It was it was not just a speaking, as we know conversations are, there's also listening.
Yes.
And Brian listened you
Mm-hmm.
as something that was not yet there and even in existence for you,
Right.
but was now by virtue of his listening and then engaging in a conversation for the difference that would make, not just for you, but for like the next edition or edition of wisdom.
That's right. That's right. Listening is so powerful. And so I will talk about the conversation for the difference you make now. And what's funny is, we call it a conversation, but it is a listening. And that is what happens in this conversation, is that you get listened in a really particular way. So when we talk about listening in the wisdom area and in all the programs and in this conversation, it's listening from nothing, from no place, from not from agreement, not from right, wrong, but from a wide open, empty place where inside that listening, you can say anything. And you find yourself saying things that you might not have known were there. So the conversation for the difference you make was originally created decades ago. Well, maybe around 2010 actually. And the idea was we wanted to create a gift. We wanted to create a gift for people. And that's really what this is. It's a free offering, and it's our gift for graduates of the Landmark Forum. And it was not only to allow people to get in touch with the difference that they already make. And that's really key here is it's not like you leave this conversation and then go create new ways to make a difference. You get in touch with the difference you already make just by virtue of who you are and who you're related to. And that's it. So you really have an awareness of yourself in a new way of the difference you already make and of the people that you're connected to and the difference that they make. So I recently I've done the conversation, I've delivered the conversation, but recently in preparation for this, I wanted to do it again. So I had someone do this conversation with me, and it was remarkable. So there's someone that I work with day in and day out and have for 20 years. And we're so different. We are so different. And, our styles are like this. And for, all these years, we butt heads because she doesn't do it the way I do it. And I don't do it the way she does it. And so if you can imagine, there's sometimes some annoyance in that relationship. And when I had the conversation, this relationship came up for me. And when I got present to who this person is and the reach that they have to make a difference in the world, and then the difference that I get to make just by virtue of being related to them and the difference that they make, it really altered how I see our relationship. And I only want to empower our relationship and her so she can make the biggest difference, because I actually got in touch with what that is beyond the way you didn't do the report the way I asked or something. Like our relationship became about no. There is a world that they are that I get to contribute to just by being related. So that's one side of it, is as the person receiving the conversation, you leave there related to your already life in a much bigger way, and are present at the difference that you make in your real life already. You don't have to go do something in order to make a difference. You get in touch with the difference you make. And we also created this because we had people who were hungry for being trained and developed to listen. So we trained hundreds of people in an intense training, and they over time, and they had to get signed off and certified, and it was in order to conduct this conversation. But in part, this got created so that we could train and develop people in having that kind of listening, in being present, in coming from all is well, in being the space in which people could hear something that they never would have heard themselves say. So it was both a training and development opportunity.
Marci, can you describe so people can kind of picture what it looks like to participate in this?
Sure. You click a link, and we'll actually provide it for you if you want.
All right.
Click a link.
We'll put it in the podcast description too.
You sign up for a time slot, and then you show up at that time. And all you have to do is show up. And, it helps to be in a place where you can speak freely and without interruptions. You're not driving or anything. You can just focus on this call. And it might be as much as an hour long, but it could only be 30 minutes or 45 minutes. I don't remember exactly what we scheduled. I think mine was 45 minutes, but we ended at 30. And the person conducting your interview, they guide you through the whole thing. You don't have to do anything other than be there and be open to engaging. And they create the space for you, and they ask you questions, and you get to just be in the conversation answering the questions. And
But
they guide you very lovely through it.
it sounds like a lovely, intimate conversation.
It is very intimate, lovely, open.
I, as you were speaking and describing it, which I find very compelling, I was thinking about how, um, in this day and this age, in the world, with all the things that are happening and just the absolute flood of information that all of us deal with, whether through our phones or media or whatever it may be. Um, I think there's a paralysis that a lot of people experience. I mean, I get in touch with it from time to time myself. Um, and there's shows anywhere you look. There's shows where people are talking about this thing or that thing or the other thing, and it's just talking and talking and talking about it. And a lot of it is they're bad and they're bad, and but it only seems, in my view, to contribute to that sense of paralysis.
Mhm.
And if you could indulge in a thought experiment for a moment,
Sure.
if you were on one of those shows and you had an opportunity to talk about what's at the heart of this conversation, what would you say to people?
I would say that one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself and the people around you is stop and be present. When you can pull back from that thought, all those thoughts and that paralysis, like you said, you could say that that's not being present, that you're not present when you're in that jumble. But when you can stop and be here with yourself, then you're available to be here for and with another. And there is no greater interruption to all that than being.
Mm. But I'm going to ask a follow up. A lot of what people deal with that causes a paralysis is um, that seeming inability to be able to talk to somebody you disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot of people are just stuck at the point of disagreeing with somebody. I mean, we all joke about Thanksgiving, you know, argument over politics, but now it's like actually a thing where people are avoiding Thanksgiving. It's like it's got
Yeah.
more mass in my lifetime than
Yeah.
it's had. Um, how uh, how do you see this also impacting that experience that people are having?
Well, it comes back to willingness, like we talked about before. So, one is a willingness to be with another view without having to defend your own. Are you willing to be there with some curiosity, with some openness, and listening? Without it, you don't need to do anything with it. You don't have to agree with it or disagree with it or even engage in it. But are you willing to listen and be curious? That would be a beginning.
Well, it's a very powerful beginning.
Yeah.
um,
It is. And Seamus, actually, so Marcy, as you were creating that, I'm over here, can't help but have my life wafer up and enjoying the conversation. And one of the things that I know is a conversation for me that gets me in that paralyzed state Seamus was speaking of is I know I want to talk to someone. I don't want to deal with whatever this is by myself. And who is the person I'm going to talk to who's not going to do anything with what I have, who's just going to listen?
Mm-hmm.
So then it's interesting then that you say, right, like that's the place to start
Yes.
because Seamus will tell you, you say anything out loud to me, I'm like, do you need me to help? Are you talking to me? God, what can I like? I automatically like my default is I want to do something with it
Yeah.
versus affording you the thing that for me is what I'm craving to be able to, talk about what I want to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
And,
yeah.
and the people who find themselves participating in the wisdom course area, they are people who want to develop themselves to be that for others. And they do. They use the curriculum and they use the programs to get out of the way, the things in the way, to be able to be that.
Yeah.
It's available to all of us.
I if you're okay with that, I'd like to just kind of pursue
Yeah,
this a little further.
sure.
Um, the there you are at Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's coming up in the United States in, a little over a month. Um, you're somewhere in the next month. Most people that are Americans, at least, that are listening to this, are gonna bump up against a conversation. Um, and I think a lot of people have a hard time letting it just, letting that curiosity be there, not doing something with it because the stakes feel like they're high, and you know everybody seems to have been persuaded that the world is coming to an end if their view doesn't prevail. And um, what would you offer to somebody in a practical way? And you kind of said it, but just like in a scenario, like where you find yourself the next time with somebody who um, you find yourself your views are about to get provoked and you're going to react, and everybody's had that experience. What would your practical advice be to people?
Um, to find what you need to say first to give yourself the room to be able to be there without taking yourself away. So it might be something like, I don't agree with your views, but I would like to hear where you're coming from. So I'd like you to tell me about it. I don't agree with it, but I want to hear you. Boom, listen.
Mm, that's very simple.
It is simple. It is simple. By saying I don't agree with your views, that's for you. That's just to give you the space to be there so that you don't have to, you know, you've said it for you so that you can just be here. Now, are you willing? You do have to be willing first to hear another view. If you're not, then well, I recommend probably not engaging, unless a fight is what you're wanting. But if you're willing to hear another view and to put down the mantle of being right, you can pick it back up after. You don't have to take on someone else's view, but if you're just willing to listen, miracles do happen from that.
Um, well, let's, if you don't mind, let's go back to the other programs in the wisdom division. We talked about the wisdom program itself, but then you also mentioned partnership in another program.
Yeah.
Can we talk about those?
Yeah. So partnership explorations follows the wisdom courses. And that is a year-long investigation out beyond what you know. So you explore the different fields of relating and you get to map your life from those fields and get out beyond what you know to explore the edges so that you're out there actually not really being familiar with the you that you've put together, the life that you've put together. You get to actually explore the edges of that and go out beyond. So people really find themselves creating beyond what they ever thought as possible for themselves. That's partnership explorations. Following that is the developmental course on relating and relationships, which is another almost year-long exploration where you focus out there beyond what you know in the field of relating. It's all about relating and relationships. And you pick the relationships in your life that you want to expand, that you want to create, that you want to have, and you use the inquiry and the community to absolutely develop beyond, use it however you wish, but it's beyond that. You get to explore through this community. It's like the leading edge of the thinking in the wisdom area is in that program.
But there's a I hear a deliberate sequence.
Yes.
How would you describe the thinking, or what's the thinking behind that sequence?
Well, once you've completed the wisdom course, you're now this adult in your life. You've now had your life line up with, the contribution you are, the difference you make, the relationships are all in great shape. And now you're ready to face exploring beyond. You take all that with you and you're ready to now go out beyond into the edges. And you go into this field that you've never been in before. You're left there. And now from there, you have this whole other course that starts there. So they build on one another, and who you are developed to be as you are developed along the way in really remarkable ways.
Well, the partnership exploration, really sounds like you get to deal with the age, like a whole other level of agency about your
Yes.
life and where it goes. And funny, we're talking about the willingness. I think it's everybody can relate to an area of their life where they really struggle with even being willing to see where they can take it.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to play in this one, Seamus.
Yeah.
That was because it is a whole nother level of agency. And it's so great because it goes right back to the listening that, Marci, you spoke of this like new playing field.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's one thing I don't, every time my wife says this thing, it always, like what's for dinner? Like people get divorced over that. Like it's because there is just this way that communication conversation, like that thing, like all of that whole world that's there. Now, look, my wife is never going to not ask, honey, what's for dinner? Because we do have to eat. And in partnership, which is the course I'm reviewing now, what if she keeps saying that and I get to like switch the dial on my listening to something different to actually play with, hearing something new in what she's saying until it's like, oh, you know what? I never actually heard that before. You know what? Yeah. What is for dinner? What are we going to eat today? Whatever that would be. Even from this morning, I was laughing like, it is 8:00 in the morning. We're already having the conversation for what are we going to eat for dinner tonight? Look at us go. Like we're so on top of the world, like just changing the dial of the listening to however the person is talking to you, they're not going to change. That's how they talk. That's my experience being in partnership. And it's like you said, building on wisdom where you've now stated, these are the relationships that I'm going to tend to. Like, this is my garden of people, of community. then now it's like, okay, so fine tuning, right? It's those relationships so that you have full access to play in them, like as a partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said.
Um, I want to kind of ask a question on behalf of a segment of the population that um, I can relate to, which is not fully, but I can relate to it. Being busy,
Hmm.
wanting to get the relevant data and move on.
Hmm.
And I think everybody can kind of relate to that pressure, to just kind of, but when it comes to this exploration, there's very deliberate words here:
Yeah.
partnership, exploration,
Yes.
relationships, and relating. Um, and you talk about kind of exploring the edges of, or testing, or being in a space of discovery. For somebody who's oriented around getting information and moving on, and doesn't necessarily think that they have time to pause and explore, um, make the case as to why that actually might be the thing that they're looking for.
Great. Well, you know how it's going being busy. And, you know, but until you take the time for a pause, and this is a structured way to take a pause from the everyday stuff that preoccupies all of us. And we all have that. We all have our to-do lists and busy lives. And, these programs are not for everyone. These are programs for people whose lives are working. They've already got the basics handled. They're not working on getting the basics of life to work. No, life is already working. And now what? That's who this is for. So it does, you do have to get out beyond the, can I pay my bills? You know, that I need to go to the doctor. This is beyond that. This is great. That stuff's handled. Now, what do I want my life to be? Who do I want to be? What could it be? What's possible? And unless you create a structure to give yourself the time and the community to do it with, it doesn't happen. And that's okay. You don't have to. You know what life's like already, and a lot of people have great lives already. No problem. But there is always a what else is possible. But it doesn't happen on your own. As far as I can tell, you do need a structure of some sort. And it's a lot more fun to do it with a community.
Yeah. Well, as you describe all that, I hear, modern life has kind of pulled us away from those kinds of structures and those kinds of, that kind of a community. Um, and
Yeah.
uh,
If I didn't have the structures that I have to engage and grow and participate, I would spend all of my time, reading books and petting cats and dogs. That's what I would do. That's my default. But I was smart enough to put myself in an environment where I have to. I want to, but I need to have to. And so this works for me.
I, 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 I'm wondering if you guys might be able to come up with a course called Petting Cats and Dogs, because I'd sign up.
Awesome.
Um, well, I have one more question with the time that we have. And, it's a question we try to ask almost everybody that's on the podcast. Time goes by very quickly, and, um, 100 years from now, anybody who's currently listening to this conversation won't be here. And I'm wondering what you want said about you when you're no longer here.
I would want said, She loved and listened well.
That's a wonderful way to end this. Thank you so much, Marci.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Really a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Landmark Difference Makers. If you're inspired by what you heard and you want to learn more about Landmark's programs or explore upcoming episodes, visit landmarkforumnews.com to find resources, event details, and more stories of people making extraordinary impact around the globe. If you are already a part of the Landmark community, check out the Landmark subscription, designed to provide ongoing support in creating a life you love. Visit landmarkworldwide.com to learn more. Until next time, keep creating, keep contributing, and keep making a difference.